listener production.
Hey, Chris Spear with you. Happy Monday and welcome to The Briefing. Should porn be taught in schools? Well, that's what a leading consent campaigner is calling for right now, leading a push to get porn literacy into more classrooms right across the country.
Learning to have sex by watching pornography is like learning to drive by watching Formula One. And young people know that that's not what they can do and how they can do that.
Chanel Contos is coming up in the second half of this episode. First though, let's get into the headlines with Tara Cassidy. It's Monday, the 26th of May.
Hey Chris, and to you listening, we're starting today in flood-ravaged New South Wales, where residents are slowly returning to their homes along the mid-north coast as lengthy clean-up efforts begin. It's understood that around 10,000 properties have been affected by months' worth of rain that fell in a matter of days last week, with more than 30,000 residents across 14 towns still isolated. According to authorities, more than 770 rescues have been carried out, with the death toll also now sitting at 5 people.
Yeah, flood-affected communities are being asked to hang tight and wait for advice from the SES before returning to their properties this morning, with teams from Interstate and New Zealand joining the coordinated cleanups over the weekend. The SES says now that waters are receding, the true scale of the devastation is becoming clear, with the Bureau of Meteorology warning that a cold front that's due today, with winds of up to 80 kilometres per hour, could cause more damage and slow recovery efforts.
Coercive control is now a crime in Queensland, prompted by the murders of Brisbane mum Hannah Clark and her 3 children. Hannah, Aaliyah, Leanna and Trey were killed by Hannah's estranged husband Rowan Baxter in 2020 in a horrific daylight arson attack. An inquest into the deaths showed Baxter had shown signs of control and abuse toward Hannah in the many years prior and had stalked her after their separation.
In March last year, the landmark law reforms passed in Queensland Parliament, dubbed Hannah's Law, with Hannah's mother Sue Clark saying her family would campaign until coercive control is criminalised across Australia. The move makes Queensland the second jurisdiction to criminalise coercive control, following New South Wales, who made it a standalone criminal offence back in 2022.
Staying with crime, and police have now charged 2 teenagers and are looking for more people they believe were involved in a brawl that included a machete and locked down a major shopping centre in Melbourne yesterday. Vic Police allege up to 10 people were involved in the pre-organised gang-related fight. Superintendent Kelly Lawson says it left a man in his 20s hospitalised with serious upper body injuries.
The rival gangs are known to each other, obviously, and it is said to have been perhaps an act of retaliation. So what I want to do is reassure the community that this was not just some random thing that happened.
She says police were quick to act and had made an arrest within 6 minutes of receiving the original call. Shopping centre staff have also been praised for helping to protect and comfort scared customers who were locked inside stores. So far, a 16-year-old boy and a 15-year-old boy will front the children's court at a later date. Now, Tara, just quickly while we're on this, seeing yesterday, it was such a reminder of the Bondi Junction stabbings. And while police have said that the circumstances are different, people on the scene yesterday said just how similar it was, in that, the centre was on lockdown, retail staff were jumping up to help, and a man could be seen running with a knife. I can't imagine how terrifying it must have all been, but this morning it's just really great to hear that the police response was so swift this time around.
Thousands of people are waking up to some welcome news this morning after a change to the way ADHD will be diagnosed and its medication prescribed in one state. The New South Wales state government's announced reforms this morning, saying it will now allow up to 1,000 GPs in New South Wales to diagnose and prescribe medication for kids and adults with ADHD, while a small number of people will be trained and then able to diagnose it too.
At the moment, people seeking a diagnosis must see a specialist like a paediatrician for children or psychiatrists for adults, with wait times incredibly lengthy, sometimes over a year. Appointments can cost hundreds of dollars, with some people spending thousands just for a diagnosis, making it harder for people to get treatment. The move's been labelled life-changing by experts and those living with the disorder.
Now, ADHD is one of the country's most common mental disorders, and it impacts around 1 in 20 people. So when we say thousands of people are going to be waking up this morning, really happy about this news. news. That's not an overstatement. It is one of the most common disorders also found among children. Now, this follows back in February. WA has committed to make similar changes to try and make that treatment more accessible in that state as well. While in Queensland already, GPs are able to diagnose ADHD and prescribe medication for kids, but not adults. So it's one step, but hopefully we'll see some similar reforms in other states and territories as well.
And fans of Grammy Award winner Lorde were left stunned last night after she rocked up to a Lorde-themed event in Sydney. The event was held at a club last night where she was spotted singing along to her own songs and dancing behind the DJ, exciting the crowd full of fans. Lorde's recently announced a new album that's set to be released in a few weeks' time and an upcoming world tour, which has left you and I, Tara Cassidy, this morning wondering whether this was just an incredible surprise or a well-planned publicity stunt. I will say, though, her new film clip for her song What Was That, there was, this impromptu concert that she held in New York City and everyone was like, what is going on? She's performing this unreleased track. It's insane. It looks crazy. People just gathering around her. Turned out she was filming her film clip for that song at the time. So let's wait and see whether this Sydney club will feature in some more press for our great pop queen.
That would be cool. And I mean, after all, who cares? Who cares? That's an awesome shock for fans. And it reminds me of a few years back when Adele did something similar. I think it was a stunt on Graham Norton where he put together this whole fake TV show where Adele impersonators would come and audition for who was the best impersonator. And she rocks up wearing a fake nose and a chin and no one realises until she starts singing that it's her.
And I think the other Adeles have finally twigged.
I always think about this too. Not that I would ever enter an Adele impersonation, event, but their reactions, what would you do? I don't know. I've said this time and time again when it comes to things that would spike my nervous system, I would probably just pass out, which, is the best thing to do.
Depending on who it is, if it was Luke Combs, die or cry, I think. I'd have an actual heart attack.
The loud sobs of a superfan, which honestly, I feel like I'd be in the same boat if I was in a similar situation. That brings our headlines to a close. Coming up next is Helen Smith's deep dive, looking into the role of porn literacy and why we need more of it rolled out across the country. That's coming up for you next.
Did you learn about porn in sex ed or health class at school? And if you didn't, do you think it should be part of the curriculum? Young Australians are watching more porn and starting to access it younger than ever before. Teach Us Consent is the group that got consent education successfully into Aussie classrooms, and now they're pushing for porn literacy to be included. And Australia is leading the way with a world first, having given $3.5 million to Teach Us Consent to make that a reality as part of the decade-long national plan to end violence against women and children, with that content launching today. Chanel Contos started the Teach Us Consent movement in Australia and spoke at the New South Wales Porn Harms Inquiry just last week. Chanel, how does consent and porn intertwine?
It's an interesting situation because consent is always required and pornography is a form of entertainment. The problem is when pornography becomes a form of sex education, which it is the main form of sex education for young people in Australia, and that's mainstream pornography, which almost never depicts consent between the actors involved in this form of performance. And what that can do is very much skew the sexual landscape in many ways. In the most explicit way, it can normalize not seeking consent for a sexual act. So, for example, there's studies that show that the more pornography someone consumes, the less likely they are to believe that sexual consent is required in order to engage in sexual choking or sexual strangulation. But there's also the kind of broad brush issues of consent where what people do quote-unquote consent to is because that's what they think is the only form of sex or the way that their partner is going to enjoy sex the most. first few times you have sex, it is remarkably awkward, probably. It can still be really fun and really nice. And if you trust the person, it can still be a, really incredible experience. And the overwhelming thought isn't awkwardness, but it sets a false expectation about what that is going to be. And I think it makes people think that doing things like checking in and asking for consent could be like a clunky or vibe-breaking experience, when in reality, that seriously adds to the vibe, and that's overwhelmingly what we hear from young people.
So what is porn literacy, and how do you make that part of sex education?
So porn literacy is a form of media literacy skills, which means how to critically engage with the piece of information you're being taught or something that you're watching. We've been taught critical thinking skills in various ways. We see something on social media and we think, who published this? What's their agenda in publishing it? What does it actually mean? How can I deduct the truth from this post and their intentions? And porn literacy is an extension of that. It's about applying and teaching critical thinking skills to young people to understand that when they consume this media, understanding that it's a form of entertainment, understanding that it's not real and that it shouldn't be a script or a truth for the way that they engage in sex, understanding the types of stereotypes and dynamics that might be learnt from watching this sort of content. There's a lot of harmful stereotypes that are normalized and promoted in terms of gender and race, and also various, the fetishization of lots of races, and also power imbalances are also a big, massive one. And topics that are explicitly, if happened in real life, would be a form of child sexual abuse or incest even, and understanding that those things are very different. Something I always say is learning to have sex by watching pornography is like learning to drive by watching Formula One. And young people know that that's not what they can do and how they can do that. But we haven't had these explicit conversations with them about pornography for them to know that this isn't real life either, because children see people drive, young people see what it looks like to be on the road. But if this is the only conversations or form of sex education they're being exposed to explicitly, that's where problems can really arise.
You've mentioned some of this already, but if we don't do anything about educating young people about porn literacy, how would porn continue to shape the expectations of sex and desires for young people? Would that continue to do it in a negative way?
I think that we know pornography access is increasing. We know that it is easier than ever to access more content than ever. We know that the average age that young people access pornography is on the decline. It's getting younger and younger. Most young people access pornography for the first time accidentally. So I also think we kind of need to make this split between protecting young people who may accidentally come across this content and maybe feel quite disturbed by it because they're not old enough yet, and ensuring that they know that the safe pathways to talk to parents about, how that may have felt for them, or even older siblings if that feels necessary and more safe. And then older teens who realistically are always going to access this content, even if we have age restrictions on and things like that, and ensuring that they're deeming this a form of entertainment rather than a tool for explicit education.
We're at a point now where you can AI generate your own pornographic content and films with real people from your lives. It's a step up almost from deep fake porn. How does this impact our relationships?
I don't know what's going to happen. We haven't fully seen it play out yet. I think this is why it is so important to include young people in all policy making and solution focus and resource creation that we do, because technology is changing so quickly, and a few years now can make a massive difference in how you experience the age of 15 or the age of 18. And we need young people there in live time to give feedback about their experiences, because they're the only ones who truly understand what's going on, to help us form solutions to these problems and also understand the impact of this sort of technology. Obviously, people are using it in order to gain sexual gratification. People are also using it as blackmail. People are using it as bullying. People are using it as jokes, quote unquote, in the group chat, lol, everyone's technically a friend. And that creates sticky situations as well, where you feel like hard to kind of like stand up about it and be like, wait, I don't want to be the brunt of the joke, even though I know you all love me. And this is a really embarrassing image of me that's just been generated. So it is nuanced. I'm not sure. We need to speak to young people.
Just last week, you called on the New South Wales government to roll out a national campaign on porn literacy at the state's Porn Harms Inquiry. What do you want to see change?
We have made amazing strides in Australia in recent years with embedding consent education in the curriculum, and sex education, although it could definitely be done better, has always theoretically in the curriculum and a strong point. Porn literacy, I think, needs to accompany this, and I think what we need to do better is educate and raise awareness for parents about how young they need to start having these conversations with young people, how to handle it if their really young child has been exposed to something online that they're not comfortable with and that they seek help in that way, ensuring that they're not met with shame or, it's probably a really normal reaction if your 9-year-old comes to you and tells you they've seen a video like this to kind of freak out. But how to handle that situation and ensure that there's a safe space created and any harms that may have happened from that exposure can be mitigated. And also being a bit realistic about the problem, and then also having open conversations with young people to, again, reduce how seriously they take this content that they see online. That, I think, is a really critical addition to consent education and sex education in Australia, because it's getting to a point where it's ridiculous to ignore it anymore. And we actually got porn literacy in a really, really minor way in the Australian National Curriculum at the last review, and it comes in at year 10 as a little subset of media literacy, and it was like, oh my God, we got the word porn in the curriculum. But it honestly needs to be happening from at least the beginning of high school, which may feel as though a controversial push or an overstep. But again, I think this is why understanding what these topics mean and how they're relating to young people and how essential it is really important to get community engagement, to have these sorts of reforms through both in school and in the whole of community.
Teach Us Consent was granted $3.5 million by the Department of Social Services to deliver content for 16 to 25-year-olds around this topic. How have you used that money?
We use that money to create heaps of resources for young people. It's really exciting. We have 10 podcasts. We have 4 mini documentaries. We have over 100 social resources being rolled out on different socials platforms, all about consent, healthy intimacy, addressing myths around consent and sexual assault, putting good information out there. And the most exciting thing about it is we worked with a group of really incredible 15 young people from around Australia, and they were involved at every point in this creation process. So the resources are for 16 to 25-year-olds. Obviously, people outside that bracket will access them. But this youth advisory group who informed this process alongside our youth-led organisation means that I think these resources will be the first of their kind in Australia in the way that they land with young people and are relatable. And they are the first of their kind in the world in the sense that we've engaged about 20-25 influential young Australians to be involved in speaking this message to young people. So when they get this across their screens, it's from someone they know, someone they like, someone they trust, someone they've laughed with before, someone whose date they've got along with before, whatever it is, not just some random actor or person telling them how they should think and what they should say and how they should behave. So it's a really incredible suite of resources. I really recommend everyone checks them out at either Teach Us Consent social channels or teachusconsent.com. And my personal favourites are the podcasts. So if you're listening to this, it means you like podcasts, and I really recommend that you check those out.
So considering this content is a first of its kind and Australia is leading the charge, will it work, and how will it reach as many people as you can?
We have a really strong hunch it will work because we have worked with incredible experts from around Australia and also some, advisors globally in this space. And we have also translated the key content from this suite of resources into 6 different languages other than English, because Australia is such a multicultural country and we want to reach as many people as possible through that. I'm really excited for this. Honestly, it's so cliche, but when we were doing reviews of the kind of first cut down of all the content, I was just overwhelmed with emotion, and I know that the team was as well, and thinking, oh my God, if only I had had this when I was a young person. So that's why I have a lot of confidence that change will be made from this.
Chanel, thanks so much for coming on The Briefing.
Thank you so much for having me.
That was Chanel Contos, founder of Teach Us Consent there. Thanks for listening to this episode of The Briefing. We'd love it if you could share this ep with someone else you think might enjoy it as well. And you can follow us on Instagram at The Briefing Podcast. And we'll be back in your feed with another ep this afternoon. I'm Helen Smith. Catch you next time.
Listener.